This week, we all got a chance to track the life cycle of a conspiracy theory. It started with Donald Trump making one up about FBI spies implanted in his campaign. It exploded to the point where the Justice Department had to brief lawmakers about what actually happened. And finally, today, after those classified meetings, where the only public statements we've heard have shot down the original allegation, the conspiracy theory seems to have been largely debunked for everyone but Donald Trump and his allies. And instead of backing off in the face of cold, hard facts, Donald Trump has expanded upon his original tall tale. Count the number of times he says the word spy in this morning's tweets. Quote, the Democrats are now alluding to the concept that having an informant placed in an opposing party's campaign is different than having a spy, as illegal as that may be. But what about an informant who's paid a fortune and who sets up way earlier than the Russia hoax? Can anyone even imagine having spies placed in a competing campaign by the people and party in absolute power for this? So I'm not reading any more of this. You know what? Bret Stephens, this is, and even by reading it, these are bold-faced lies. And as his audacity and his sort of fantasies expand, I just wonder what role you think the truth plays in any of this for them.
You know, speaking about North Korea just a minute ago, I said that what is really at work is a kind of neurosis. But here I will say that what's at work is a strategy, because Donald Trump is setting out to basically throw enough mud at the investigation to cast a kind of, I'm mixing metaphors, a cloud in people's minds over, well, you know, there's something wrong with the investigation. This was started on false pretenses. There is a kind of deep state loathing for the president. The Mueller investigation should never have begun, and anything that it turns up will therefore be colored by questions about its origins. And what's so particularly frightening is the president seems completely incurious about the possibility that Russia was making attempts to infiltrate his campaign in exactly the same way that they had infiltrated campaigns in other countries where certain politicians espoused pro-Russian views. You know, when the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, said on TV somewhere, he said, you know, the president should have, as a candidate, should have welcomed the possibility that the FBI was keeping tabs on this.
Shouldn't he still? Joyce Vance is joining the conversation now, former U.S. attorney, now an MSNBC contributor. I read these in the morning, and between the president's tweets and my coffee, you know, I start the day at 11 on a scale of 1 to 10. But shouldn't the president? I mean, even now, I feel like he could wake up tomorrow and say, you know what? I want to get to the bottom of what Russia did because I want to protect this country. Why is that never the advice he's given? Why is that never anything that, do you think he will ever say, I want to protect America from Russia interfering in our democracy?
I think that used to be the mystery about his behavior, why he had no curiosity about Russia's efforts to infiltrate his campaign. But now it's really the linchpin piece of evidence. We're, you know, a year and a half in, and at this point, the fact that the president has shown no interest at getting to the bottom of Russian efforts to influence his campaign, Russian efforts to have an impact on the American vote, really speaks for itself.
But Joyce, I guess what I'm asking is, are we participating in something that we're going to look back and deeply regret? Because the tweet started, you know, I'm innocent of collusion, and people around him said, he could barely collude with his press office. And then they went to, well, a president can't obstruct justice because, you know, they're allowed to fire whoever they want. Now the lies are almost like things out of fairy tales. There's a made-up spy implanted, which I think of teeth and other things when I think of the word implanted, into his campaign. The people who were being investigated were suspicious enough that a FISA court with just, you know better than me, the highest threshold for proof, said, yeah, they are troubling. Let's keep an eye on them. Where are we heading by continuing to cover what is almost beyond lies, fairy tales, fantasies, perversions of his own original story?
He's remarkably good at spin. Where we are in this country is he has us so thoroughly down in the weeds that we can't see the trees, let alone the forest. We can't see this concept that the president is saying, in essence, that the FBI should not investigate when there is good intelligence that says that the Russians are trying to influence outcomes in our country. And you're right, it's a dangerous path for us to go down, and it's not a political issue. This is the sort of moment where we need to all step back and put aside our personal political beliefs and think about our country, not our party. Think about truth as opposed to lies. You know, if there had been any truth to this so-called Spygate story, then yesterday, after there is this series of meetings that involved DOJ briefings, we would have seen Republicans emerge and say, aha, the president was onto something. But we saw absolute crickets after those meetings, and that should tell us that the president here is yet again lying about what's going on.
He's lying.
That's the danger.
And Joyce is right, Mike. They would have shown up on Sean Hannity. They would have been booked in like packs of three, and three shoulder-to-shoulder shots from the Capitol saying, ha ha, we've got it, the smoking gun. There is nothing.
Yeah, no, there was nothing. The whole thing was a card trick and a bad one. The problem is the reason the president won't defend the national interest or the idea the Russians were undermining our democracy is he thinks his interest is the national interest. He is that, I believe, self-obsessed. So if it's good for him, it's good for America. If it's attacking him, it's attacking America. He cannot see foreign enemies. He only sees Trump enemies. He is the first president in modern history, and I'll include Nixon in this, or Clinton, who was immune from shame. And shame used to be the weapon that could hold the top in line, and it means nothing to him. Now, the one thing I'll say, though, he's not being that successful. He's got the office, but there's only one mark-to-market event in politics. You know this, Election Day. Yeah. And his numbers are bad, among the worst ever. He's heading toward what could be a very traumatic election day for the Republican Party institutionally. We will see what the day after the election looks like. But he is not a political success.
I want to stay here. I've got something that I want to show you, but I'm so sick of people coming, even on this show, and telling me that his base isn't going anywhere, his numbers are going up. He barely won. Yeah. I mean, it was an electoral victory, but he, you know,
he has this Rasputin trick going, which is everybody, and I was one of them, said, oh, he's going to lose by 4 million votes. It's over the demography, and then he won, so now he's got this.
But he still lost by millions of votes.
Yes,
I mean, and I'm not relitigating the outcome. I'm just saying it's not like he has this buffer that has him immune from anything. You don't need that many people to wonder if maybe he's full of it.
If you replayed Election Day today with just a change in demography of the country, basically who's died, he'd lose.
All right, I feel better for the first time. All right, let me put up this list.
I don't have a time machine, but it's the fact.
I'm buying it. Let me put up this list of all the conspiracy theories of yesteryear that Obama wiretapped. I think he said tapped my wires. I like that he separated that. Democrats colluded with Russia. Ted Cruz's father was involved in JFK's assassination. Obama wasn't born in the U.S. Birtherism. Thousands celebrated 9/11 on rooftops. Millions of people voted illegally. Syrian refugees are ISIS terrorists. He made up a theory about Scalia's death, and he's questioned the legitimacy of the Access Hollywood tape since the first moments after he heard it.
So I think that this is beyond lies. It's propaganda, right? And I do think it's strategic. I think of all that list, and there you could have done many more, the ones that are closest to the truth and his vulnerabilities are the ones where he projects in a very simple way by saying that, in fact, his opponents are the ones who have done exactly what he does, right? Creating an entire structure during his campaign around the criminality and the rigging of the election that is happening by the Democrats, when we all know that many people, at least many people in his campaign and his family, if not he, knew that there were Russians who were trying to give them information to do exactly that. That's
not only
classic misinformation.
They sat in the meeting with the Russians.
They sat in the meeting. They wanted the meeting. And so when we ask, why is he so uncurious, it's because he was unable to see that if someone's offering something that will help him win, his son, his son-in-law, his family members, his top campaign aides said, yeah, bring it on.
I love
National security interests be damned. That's why he's uncurious about whether Russia meddled in the election, because we see what their campaign's disposition was to exactly that promise.